My name's Adelle Onyango, and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to this episode of Legally Clueless podcast. Thank you so much for rocking with the fam. If you're an OG member, always got love for you. This is a jam-packed episode that I think you're going to enjoy. This is what's coming up in a bit.
We used to be sent to go back home because we didn't have 20 shillings or 10 shillings. I'll see my age mates, their dads coming to school to pay, or them running to tell their daddies. So I am here with a mother who is unable to provide at that moment. Then I realized that the reason that we are going through some challenges is because I don't have a dad around.
That is Philip's story. It's on the way. If you're new to this podcast, welcome to the family. Audio episodes like this go out every single Monday. We have 2 other podcast shows. One that goes out on Wednesdays called Midweek Teas, and we have Ask a Therapist out every Friday, where you get to have all your burning questions answered by a therapist. We also have an amazing video series, 4 seasons of it out. You can check that out on our YouTube, and while you're there, you will see that we have a tour series going on from our East Africa tour. Last but not least, make sure you officially join the family. Sign up on our website, which is legallycluelessafrica.com. All those links are in the show notes. All right, I really don't know where to begin. Let me begin in Kigali. Yes, I absolutely loved our East Africa tour because as much as we are in East Africa, I come to you every week from Kenya. We can assume that we have knowledge about the countries surrounding us, but going on ground is where it's at. I feel like the East Africa tour was one of the most expanding experiences I've ever been through. We teamed up with the Mastercard Foundation to do that. They linked us with amazing, inspiring Africans who they've worked with and taken through various scholarships. And we also got to experience the country's cultures, history, food, music. It was wonderful. So in the most recent episode, we are in Kigali. And this episode is one of my favorites because it has everything to do with art. First and foremost, the incredible scholar who has been through a program by the Mastercard Foundation. Her name is Fiona. Her and I went and had an art class. First, I learned that I don't know how to even paint ladybugs. I'm going to stick to words, okay? But we had an art class, and during the class, I got to learn her incredible story and the marvelous work that she's currently doing. Listen to this.
I do poultry farm. In that poultry farming, there is a project called Women Empowerment Initiative. In that initiative, we used to train women and youth that are school dropouts, things like product making. Product making includes like how to make liquid soap, how to make snacks, different snacks, cakes, so that it can help them to make small business for them to make money. That's how I engage women and youth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're doing even now. That's the business you're doing.
Yes.
And you started that in second year.
Yes.
In this episode, I also got to meet another artist who is one of the top artists in Kigali. His name is Emmanuel. Like this guy, when we went to his art gallery that's called Choose Kigali, there's like one room with a wall of all the people who've come to that particular gallery. And there's like Idris Elba and all of these like global icons. And he's just such an amazing, down-to-earth, incredibly talented man. You get to see him and some of his art in this episode. And last but not least, you know how we all go to Kigali and we're like wowed by how clean and organized it is? Well, I got to meet one of the women on the team responsible for this. And she happens to be a Fawe mentor. And so when the various young people get scholarships from Mastercard Foundation via Fawe, they also get access to mentorship. And Sheila is her name, is one of the mentors they meet. Listen to this.
So my background is in civil engineering. I have been doing road construction, transport planning, road maintenance, but currently we are now, I'm now coordinating projects that are in the area of urban mobility improvement. And we also have projects that are into informal settlement upgrading. So I coordinate a lot of projects that are in the area of civil engineering or urban planning.
And so hearing the things that you're working on, I feel like I should also give you your flowers about just how organized, clean, and very planned out Kigali is. It's hard not to notice that, you know?
Yeah, I'm actually, I would say I'm proud to be part of this development because people will always say Kigali is very clean, Kigali is very organized. Yeah, I think we are the busiest institution, I would say, in this city because we want everything to be perfect for everybody. So I would like everybody to know that Kigali is the cleanest city in the world. Yeah, I know we may not be ranking the first, but we have ambitious goals to be clean, to be sustainable in all aspects.
So I really think it's an incredible episode. So if I were you, I would head on over to our YouTube page, watch the episode, share it with your entire fam bam. We had an incredible time on this East Africa tour, and it's wonderful to be able to take you along the ride with us. The other thing that I need to share before we dive into 100 African stories is our wellness talk that's coming up on the 28th of September. So this month we are focused on making sure that you and I improve our fitness and our nutrition. Can I just say, my nutrition, I'm very proud. Remember I told you I got somebody who's really skilled to do all my meal preps. I'm really eating well. The other day I was telling people how I can't remember the last time I had fries. Yet before getting this particular person to help me with my food, I was having fries. Like I could have fries twice a day. I could have it lunchtime fries, dinner time fries. I was just not eating right, not honoring my body. And that's really what is driving this, is to say that as a community, we're constantly giving you access to tools to help you do your mental health healing work. Does that make sense? So everything mental, everything emotional. But we, I think, have left our fitness and our nutrition behind. Yet wellness includes how we take care of our physical bodies. So on the 28th of September, we have the amazing fitpreneur, fitness coach, Shiv Simani, giving a talk on everything from fat gain to fat loss to the various fitness scams we see online to how fitness can help you with your mental health. And also he'll talk about nutrition and how nutrition plays a huge role in your fitness. Tickets are only 1,000 bob, and the talk is virtual, meaning wherever you are in the world, you can join us. Grab your tickets. They're going really quick just by going to our website or hustlesasa.com. All the links are in the show notes. And yeah, let's meet at our wellness talk. I attend all the wellness talks, by the way. Because there's always so much to learn. The last one we had was on how your mental health affects your physical health. And so I'm happy that the next step is to focus more on our physical health, because you cannot take care of your mind and be so intentional about your mental wellness and leave your physical wellness behind. It just will not work out well in the end. Trust me. I know this from my burnout breakdown last year. Wellness is everything. It's your mind, but it's also your physical body and what you put into your physical body and whether you're moving your physical body enough, So come on through for our wellness talk. All right, let's jump into Philip's story. And this is part 1 of the story. Part 2 will be out next week. It's quite a powerful story, I have to say, especially coming from a man's perspective when he's talking about family, surnames. Trust me, that's going to make sense. And searching for his father. 100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
My name is Philip Maura. I am a pastor. I am married to Joan Maura, and we have 2 children, Tash, who is 10 years, and Wema, who is 8 years. So been married for 13 years. And I grew up, I'm just about to turn 40. I grew up in the village, in the outskirts of Nakuru. I grew up in my grandfather, with my grandfather and my grandmother around. We didn't have much. And many times my mom wasn't really around, especially in the initial years. When I was born, or I was conceived, my parents weren't married. So I was born in my grandfather's home. And then after that, my father came for my mom. And so they now went to live together, the 3 of us. Immediately after that, or soon after that, my sister follows me in another one. They were born. But after about 4 years, that was around 1989. I think my parents were having issues, and so one time I don't remember it clearly, but if I were to go back to the story, we have very scattered pictures of how that moment was. So I just remember my mom packing her things, and we left from the village which my parents used to live, and we went all through to now where my grandparents used to live. And I was about 4 years. My mom was carrying my other sisters, so there's no way I would have been carried. She would not have managed to carry 3 children. And so we walked, because there were nomads. So it's the countryside. So I remember us walking and walking and walking from morning up until evening. We arrived at my grandparents' place in the evening. There were no mobile phones even to warn them. And when I arrived at their place, my legs were in pain. Just imagine I'm walking for all those 4 years old. And so with intermittent, resting here and there. But I was extremely exhausted. I remember that night, just like it was the other day, I was in a blue short with a t-shirt. I think we were malnourished, so the tummy was out and bulging. And I arrived, we didn't have food. I was hungry to death, and my legs were in pain. So what we did that night, my grandma had to wash and to, with hot towels, my legs, because they were burning. I kid you not that up to today, if I stand for long, my legs still pain. So I remember every time I stand for long, I think I'm reminded where this pain came from. I have lived with it since 1989 up to now. So you can imagine it's about how 35 years. Constantly being reminded of that day when my mom left her home. And when we went to my grandparents, they were old. My grandfather, I think he was about late 80s. I wasn't received well. My mom has come back with 3 children. There is a hostile. Some of her siblings were rather hostile, especially to me directly. And I was constantly reminded that as much as I was of that name, and in our culture, the culture that I come from, I was named after my grandfather. So I bear his name. So just by the name alone, I am told that I belong there. But on the side, with my mom's siblings, some of them, not all, I'm constantly reminded that I actually don't belong there. I think there was a threat I might take inheritance, and there was nothing. But whatever small was there, I might stay there for long, and my grandfather might give me something. So at one point, now my mom went away with my 2 sisters, and so I was left in the care of my grandfather and my grandmother. They tried their best. So going to school, being taken to school, and then, with nothing much, many times would sleep hungry. Later, my mom came back with my sisters in the mid-90s. And so food wasn't enough for one child. Now with 3 children, with 2 other children, and also another auntie had brought also her children there. So you can imagine food was something else. So we never used to have enough. And so there we are in the countryside. My mom was, they meet with my dad, and she became pregnant with me when she was in high school, Form 2. My mom is not old. I think the age gap between me and my mom is 16 years or 17 years. Then after that, her marriage collapses at 19 years. So she was very young. When it collapsed, when her marriage failed, I think as a teenager she had put a lot of hope in her marriage. And then things don't work out. So here we are, my mom with 3 children. She's barely 20. The responsibility of bringing up 3 children who are hungry, who are not somehow wanted by some of the relatives. I think there was a lot of emotional pain that my mom was going, and I don't think she has ever processed that. That way later I come and see, actually, I think my mom was going through a lot. She's young, no home, no finances. She didn't finish school. So the only thing that she can rely on is being a casual laborer here and there. It is not enough even to feed her children. I think even the way she would discipline us, sometimes it was a way to let out the anger that she had harbored for long. And by that time, I think the time that I was growing up, or I was coming to discover who I am, there was people whose marriages had failed. They were seen as social misfits, and especially as a woman. So there's something that she did wrong, that her husband sent her away. So she's carrying that emotional pain. She has been let down by someone because my mama, rumors have it that they met in a church fellowship. So this was someone who was, even in terms of spiritual maturity, they met in a good environment. But life has happened and children have shown up here. So she's carrying spiritual baggage. She has emotional baggage. She's regretting she didn't finish school. Maybe she had finished, would have gotten a job and to take care of her children. And so those are the things that are going through her mind. She's in a village, no money. I think that's the environment that my mom was in. We used to be sent to go back home because we didn't have 20 shillings or 10 shillings. I'll see my age mates, their dads coming to school to pay, or them running to tell their daddies. So I am here with a mother who is unable to provide at that moment. Then I realized that the reason that we are going through some challenges is because I don't have a dad around. That's number one. Number two is bullying. Boys are cheeky. Growing up in a time that, we used to watch them movies and the films about fighting, Bruce Lee, those were our mentors, and Arnold Schwarzenegger and all that. They were guys. So you can imagine here we are fighting with boys as boys would fight. And many times actually I lost fights before I even began or even I started them. Because I remember one boy telling me, if you beat me and if you win, I'm going to tell my dad and he's going to thrash you. So whether I win now, it's going to be a loss, because at the end, I'll be reported to someone higher. And then you see my age mates, millennials, we grew up obeying authority, and especially parental authority. So if I'm summoned, I'll be beaten. So there's no need of fighting now. So because I'll be bullied, you don't have a daddy to report me to, but I can report you to my daddy. The other challenge was the challenge or the question of belonging. Where do I really belong? Because I am named after my grandfather. So even if I try to lie to my age mates, to the village mates, I can't call my grandfather my father because I'm named after him. So where do I really belong? So I'm in here, but I can't really, I'm being given a name in this family, but I can't use that name somehow, even to either bring some advantage or to my advantage. So people knew even the old man that you live with is not actually your father because you're named after him. That's the question of, acceptance. The question of identity. When now we were registering during our time we had the KCPE and we registered for the exam, it's when everybody now knew what my real name was. Because all along I've been using the name Philip Maura, but now I have to register my name officially. And so when we were registering, we were asked the name of your parent. So the teacher said, you don't have a daddy? Yes. So you will be called your mom's name. So I am a boy and I have to carry the surname of my mom, because in my culture, the Kikuyus, we don't mind using our mom's names. Other cultures could be different. And so I'm in class 8, and people will be called using their parents' name. You know that you start with a surname. So I'll be called Jerry Philip Maura. And you can imagine the way some of the friends, they'll be looking at me. You're called a girl's name? And I think I I developed some friendship with another guy because also he was carrying his mom's name. So it's like, birds of a feather. Misery loves company. So we developed a very deep friendship at that point because only the two of us in the whole class, we were carrying our mother's names or using our mother's names as the surnames. And boys are just boys, so they start teasing me, Jerry, or I'm not going to fight with someone who carries a girl's name, and we are just in our teenagehood, just bullying, they call it a bullying. And it's not something that I really liked. So in class 8, I never liked my mom's carrying my mom's name. And so that might give a glimpse of why now I started when I went to look for my dad. So the question of identity was big. The question of being accepted, I think those up to age 14, the question of identity and acceptance, I think those were very, very big questions for me at that moment. And the question of trying to relate, the reason why we are struggling financially is because we don't have a father. If the father was there, we would be having something. So then I get into high school. Luckily, I found, our school, it was run by a headmistress, by a lady. It was a Catholic school. So there was a sister there who was in charge. And I think she felt she extended to me some grace. And so she was very happy that I'm actually carrying a lady's name. It's funny that, if during that time that I find comfort from the ladies. The ladies didn't have issues with it. What's in a name? She was able to guide me. Form 1 and Form 2. At one moment I dropped for a year because I didn't have school fees. So Form 1 I went to school well, and there was some bursaries, there were some scholarships. The school that I went to wasn't the school that I had been called, but I went to that school because I had been promised, because I had performed rather well during my KCP, despite all the issues with my surname. I performed somehow better. I was above average student. And so she looked for me so that I can join that school, the Catholic school. She had a goal of getting brighter students, few of them, even to be able just to lift up the overall performance of the school. So I went there with a promise that I'll be taken care of. And so we'll pay. It was a day school. So whatever we are going to pay it will not be a lot of money so that I can stay in the school. And it was a deal, because even the schools that I would have gone to, I don't think we would have afforded. So, but then Form 1 we are in that school, then just getting into Form 2, my grandma dies and the headmistress is transferred. So I'm left now with no option apart from just going back home. And so I was home for a whole year until the neighbors realized that it is not right. And so they came together and fundraised and got a few coins here and there. They really did their best. I really say that I'm a villager because it's a village that took care of me at that point. So I was able to come back to the same school, but because I wasn't there for Form 2, so I have to sort of repeat Form 2. So then my classmates we started with have progressed to the next class. In Form 3, I had the urge one day I look for this dad who deserted us. And also now one of the uncles was really pushing me, I think selfishly, from my mom's side. You come and say, you don't belong here. Actually, I can tell you where your dad is. And so he was pestering me with that. So one day he told me, I heard your dad lives in this and this place, about 60 kilometers from where we used to live now. And so one day I got some money and decided this is the time to go and look for my dad. So I made the long trip to go towards those sides of Nyahururu, from Nakuru, Nyahururu. I sat in there and I was really longing to go and see him. So I couldn't remember his face. I couldn't remember how he was looking like. Will he actually remember me? How does he look like? So I was a bit curious. But I was actually longing to go and see him and to rebuild the friendship again with him. So I had my money, It wasn't a lot, but at least it would take me there in car park. And so I got into a matatu and went to the place to look for my dad. The information that I had received from my uncle was he lived in a certain area, and I've never been there. So got into the mat and went to this town in Nyahururu, and I just asked about this particular area. I can't remember actually its name. Direct me to this area. Being like informed, in Nairobi, go to say somewhere like Githurai. So I arrived in Nairobi and then head to Githurai. So I arrived in Nyahururu, then proceeded to this place. I had to ask for directions. So I alighted, not knowing where am I going actually. In this, it was a smaller part of the town, but a smaller town now. Where am I going to start from? So I was just walking. I remember praying and saying, God, if this is your desire, show me. So there are many homes, there are many people around. I'm just roaming around. If daylight comes, I just get into Nyahururu town, get a place to sleep, or I go back to Nakuru. It was about 1.5 hours drive. So I'm there, just walking around this small town. Then I see some boys playing, and 2 of them look like my sister. They were playing football. So I was curious. Okay, these guys look like my sister. So I asked them about, hey, what's your name? So they told me there were 3 boys. So 2 of them were playing, running up and down. I asked them, what's your name? So they tell me their names. Then I asked them, what's your daddy's name? Then they tell me the name of my dad. So I asked them, where is your house? It was just a coincidence, but I think it was God-led, because I remember praying and asking God, show me. And I had been walking around for like 1.5 hours, just strolling in this small town, part of the town. And so I asked them, where is your home? So they tell me, our home is up there. So they were maybe about 10 or thereabout. So they take me to where their mom was. The mom has a shop, a big shop and a busy shop. So they tell their mom, this one has asked about come and show him about our home, but we don't know him. So then the lady asked me, who did you want to see? So I say, I wanted to see so and so. How are you related? So I kept quiet. But she was very curious, but I withheld the information, so I didn't tell her. So she told me, he's not here, you have to really wait, and it might take long. So I hung around in this shop, and we are not talking. It was a bit awkward. I think it just teenagers, sometimes you're very bold. So I was very bold at that moment. So I'm hanging around here. I'm not telling her who I am, and I'm not going. So I think it was a bit uneasy even for her. So then around 6, almost there, when it's just about to get dark, my dad comes. And so when I saw him, I realized that he's the one. I don't know how, but he came, and I'm looking at him and smiling. He looks at me, but he can't remember me. So then he headed straight to the shop, and he was told that young man outside there wanted to see you. So he looks and peeps. He said, why did you want to see me? So no words were coming out of my mouth. So the wife told him, go closer to where he is. So he came out and stood where I was, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I started crying. I don't know from where. I'm somehow a little bit bold man, but at that moment I just broke down. So I started crying. So it's that time that he called my name. But it was an awkward moment of about 30 seconds, asking me who I am, and me crying, and him calling my name. But I think it was the turnaround of things. It's just 30 seconds, if I may remember well, but something that really transformed and changed my life. Because I was there, and he's doing somehow fine in life. We are there. We are struggling. How did he erase us from his memory? No contact, nothing. So at that moment, I also felt a sense of anger. So it's 30 seconds that all this conversation happening in my mind. when I was going, I thought, when my dad see me, I'll be embraced. There's a story in the Bible of the prodigal son, where the father sees the son, and the father is the one who runs to the son and embraces the son. So that story was somehow in my mind. I think that's what I had very high expectations, but everything flopped. He doesn't even know me. He has to be told, go and speak to that young boy outside there. And I felt, this guy, he moved on. He moved on with life.
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless. That was part 1 of Philip's story. I think it's pretty powerful. And part 2 will be out in next week's episode, so make sure you're here for that. My goodness. How determined, But some of the things that struck me is like even within family, how you can have aunts and uncles who do not want the best for you. I watched a TikTok video where a lady was saying if someone didn't like your mom in your family, chances are they don't like you. And I was like, this is an interesting way of looking at it. But I'm afraid it might be also a very honest way of looking at it, or wise way of looking at it. They could dislike you not because of who you are, but like in Philip's case, it's about inheritance and assets and material stuff. But the thing is, I always tell people, like how in your workplace where you work, there are characters who maybe you don't gel with because their values are off, or they're characters who steal, they're characters who like instigating drama, etc. All of those people belong to families. And so families are made up of everyday humans who have faults, who may be guided by the wrong things. So don't forget that when you are choosing how what people in your family say affects you, who you hang out with in your family. Try not to be too naive. But yeah, I remember that part of Philip's story. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so heartbreaking. But I'd love to know your thoughts on the story and the issues around family that come up. Drop your thoughts in the comment section on whatever platform it is you're listening to this on. And if you're from the Greater East Africa region, remember you can catch us on Trace Radio every single Monday and Wednesday at 1 p.m. and 11 p.m, Fridays with at 1 p.m. If you want to share your story on this podcast, fill out our storyteller form. A link to it is in the show notes, and one of our correspondents will reach out to you. Honestly, the only requirements is that you be African. If you're African, we know you've got a story. It's valid and we want to hear it. If you have enjoyed this episode, which I'm pretty sure you have, drop us a comment or give us a 5-star rating. And don't forget to share it with all your people. And also, it's been a while since I shared some grace your way. So I'm sending you tons of grace and tons of love. That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.